AI tools are popping up every day, everywhere in most industries. And I was pretty excited when I ran into Kayvon and the team of Voxel at a seminar I was attending in the US. So while we are considering, and you're maybe considering some security or privacy or how we do some implementation, these tools are opening up opportunities, as we know, not only to make our operations more productive, but also safer as well. So how can we explore these new technologies with our eyes open? And I think today is a really good example of just some excellent innovation around AI. So today we've invited our associate member company to share some case studies examples of how companies in a few industries are using their artificial intelligence to improve workplace health and safety. So joining us today, we have from Voxel, we've got Brittany DeRuffalo. Again, I knew I was going to do that, but thank you for joining us, a safety advisor at Voxel, and Kay Van Deldar, an account executive also from Voxel. And of course, we have our own safety lines advisor and ergonomics human factors specialist, Will Thomas. And Will will actually join us a little bit later on to do Q&A with Vaughn and Brittany. So welcome, Kayvon and Brittany. I'm looking forward to today's session. I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce yourself and get right into today's webinar.
Perfect. I will go ahead and share my screen right now. And thank you guys for joining and thanks for the introduction, Wayne. Today, we're very excited to share more about how AI technology can help improve workplace safety. And it's much less complicated than you might think it is. And uh, so we're going to go ahead with the next slide. In terms of brief introductions, I'll start with myself. My name is Kayvon, account executive here at Vox. So I've been here for almost 4 years. Uh, Even when I first joined the company almost 4 years ago, I thought this was the coolest thing I had seen in a very long time in terms of AI technology and how it could be applied not only for building an amazing business, but also helping improve everyday workers and improving safety and having a positive impact on everyday lives. So that's what motivated me to first join the company. Before this, I didn't come from the safety world. I previously worked on the venture capital side of things, investing in technology. So I've always been in the technology industry for my entire career, but this is my first time being in the AI and safety space. And on that note, we have a resident safety expert with us, Brittany. I'll let her introduce herself.
Thank you, Kayvon. Hi, everyone. So excited to be here with you today. My name is Brittany DeRaffalo and Wayne, no pressure. It's always butchered. But I'm the Director of Customer Solutions for Voxel. And I think more importantly, prior to joining the Voxel team, I was actually a Voxel customer. I was leading environmental health and safety and risk management for ESOB, which was a welding, wire, and welding consumable manufacturer. My background is all 11 years of my career in industry, focusing in various industries such as manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, consulting, warehousing, and even some in television. My perspective on EHS, I like to keep it innovative, focusing more on cultivating strong safety cultures, implementing sustainable systems, and leading with a people-centric philosophy.
All right. We're really excited to share more about this too. And I'm sure you guys are hearing a lot about AI in the news and looking at applications for your business. And I hope by the end of today, you've seen a real world example and have plenty of questions on how it can be applied to your own business. In terms of a brief agenda today, Brittany will quickly talk about the state of workplace safety, essentially the premise for how Voxel and AI helps tackle certain issues that we're seeing in the current state of workplace safety. Then I'll come in and give you guys a really quick overview of what is computer vision and what is AI in terms of like how the technology itself is working. The most fun part will be the product showcase. You'll get to see a lot of real world videos of examples of AI in action, and I think that's the best part because everyone likes to watch videos. And then lastly, we'll talk about a few case studies and go into the Q&A with MSA BC team. Perfect.
Awesome. Oh, one slide up. There we go. As we look at the current state of workplace safety, I think that some of the points I'll highlight here aren't new to us. Unfortunately, workplace safety today is still too reactive, and we see it all too many times across industries. We're continuing to see serious incidents, most tied to risky behavior and not necessarily equipment failures, things that are maybe inevitable or lack of being foreseeable. The cost is high. Every time we have a lost time injury, we're seeing about $45,000 spent per injury on average, and collectively millions of lost time across each of those injuries. And we're impacting associates' lives temporarily and permanently. Too many people are getting hurt. Near misses and unsafe conditions are continuing to go unnoticed, which means we're missing opportunities to prevent those incidents before they occur. So the challenge is clear. Traditional safety programs have not been able to keep up yet, and we need to have better visibility and proactive tools to truly reduce risk. And that's where we're going to get into how computer vision AI can do that. As we talk some statistics, I'm highlighting OSHA here, and I think we'll see this across whether it be U.S. and British Columbia and other countries. But OSHA we've seen here in place for over 50 years, and yet many of the same challenges still exist today. Work environments are still requiring workers to take on levels of risk to complete their task, even in situations where we know that risk could be fully removed. The numbers reflect that reality. In between 2020 and 2024, here in the US, we've seen nearly 35,000 serious injuries, leading to almost 5 million days of lost work. The takeaway is clear for us. We have a mission statement. Despite decades of regulations and programs, the industry is still struggling with the same fundamental issues. So, as safety professionals, as industry leaders, this is our calling. We must challenge ourselves to approach this problem statement differently. So what does different look like? Again, we keep hitting on this. Safety is reactive because visibility is limited. So in traditional programs, we're waiting for something to go wrong and then we take action. I would imagine we've all seen this safety pyramid. It's not new, but what is new is this idea of leading indicators and proactive safety taking such a big lean into organizational cultures and industry KPIs. We know that traditional safety programs aren't proactive. So what are the things we're missing? They can lack engagement. They could be fear-based. They can have competing priorities with operations. People don't always feel empowered to identify those risks early because we're responding. The organization is waiting to respond after something bad is happening. So that can be not the only reason, but some of the reasons why near misses and unsafe conditions are slipping under the radar. So if we can spot and address those unsafe behaviors before they escalate to a serious incident, lost time, we can prevent accidents altogether. So by shifting visibility downwards to unsafe conditions and near misses, taking corrective action sooner, we can prevent them. And this is how we're going to shift from reactive to proactive safety.
Awesome. Thanks, Brittany, for kind of setting the context of the landscape and essentially the problem statement that Voxel was looking to solve with AI and artificial intelligence. Uh, for the next couple of slides, I'm here to show I mean, a lot of people have questions about what is AI, how does computer vision work, and what are the fundamentals behind how it operates. And that's what I'm here to share with you right now for the next couple of slides. So essentially, what computer vision is, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's computers seeing based off of images or videos. So essentially, how our own brains work in terms of pattern recognition and seeing pixels on a screen like what you're looking at in terms of your laptop, the computers can be the same thing. So breaking down a video into different images and then the images into pixels and then drawing patterns between them. So eventually, computers can learn what a human being looks like and what a forklift looks like, what a palette looks like, what a machine looks like, and things of that nature. And once the computer starts to understand, okay, here are the different objects in the environment, now we can start to build different rules on top of that, saying, okay, maybe a forklift needs to stop here, or we don't want people in this area. And it can kind of build on itself from there. So that's the fundamental of how computer vision works, is like essentially just like how ChatGPT, you would type in words into a prompt and then the AI engine will spit words back to you. It's the same thing here where instead of words, computer vision AI models ingest video and image data, and then it'll spit out an output when when it's looking for something in particular. If any of you guys have been to San Francisco anytime or other major cities here in the US, you might be familiar with Waymo, the self-driving car company. I like to use that as an example because it's a very cutting edge and new example of how computer vision works. You'll see cameras and sensors all around these vehicles, and you'll notice there's no driver in the car. These are completely self-driving vehicles that are taking people like Uber and Lyft all around the city. And they've launched in like Los Angeles and a few other cities as well. And it's amazing because when it sees like a green light, it knows to go. When it sees a pedestrian, it knows to stop. So in the same principle of how self-driving cars work, that's also another application for the technology that we're describing here. We also created this really quick 3-minute video or so to describe what AI is, and I think it's going to also inform just for any of the technology nerds in the room. Uh, this is also like to demystify AI. So it's not just like magic that you think is happening. It's actually breaking down exactly how artificial intelligence works and what it can do and what it can't do. So I'll go ahead and share my or play the video.
The word AI can make some of us imagine robot overlords and apocalyptic sci-fi movies. The truth is, modern AI is just a super-powered pattern recognition program. We give a computer a ton of data and ask it to look for patterns. Here's a couple of scientists from Google explaining how we teach AI how to recognize handwriting.
Here's a data set where lots of people wrote digits between 0 and 9. People write in all kinds of ways. So the question is, instead of us needing to manually code rules for all the ways people write, could a machine figure it out itself?
Each image is 784 pixels. The computer can map out those pixels and look for the patterns that make up each digit. Once it's been tested millions of times, the computer can get pretty confident that it's guessing the right number.
We've color-coded them so that it's easier for us to see what's going on. And you can see groups of digits clustering together. It's learned something about the meaning of these digits.
Just like the handwriting AI, Voxel is a type of AI called computer vision, which teaches computers how to recognize objects in an image or a video. You can think of any frame of a security camera video as a pattern of pixels. We can break up an image of a forklift, a safety vest, a liquid spill, or a blocked emergency exit door into pixels. Voxel's AI is trained to recognize these patterns of hazards and nothing else. You might be wondering, how does the AI know what it's looking at? Imagine you want to train your dog to fetch a specific toy. How does your doggo know which toy to fetch? You show your pup the toy and give him a treat for fetching the right one. Over time, he learns and gets better at the task. AI works in a similar way. We teach the AI by showing it many labeled images of forklifts, and we correct it when it makes a mistake. In case you didn't know, when you prove you're not a robot by clicking images, you're also training an AI. You're giving human feedback to make an AI a little more accurate. Similarly, Voxel's safety specialists review the AI's work each day to help guide it in the right direction. All this training happens on supercomputers that can process millions of images very quickly. The end result is a helpful assistant that has been trained to do one task really well. Send your team home safe every day.
And one of my favorite parts of this video is how it describes AI at the end. I think a lot of people, and we'll touch on this towards the end as well, a lot of people think that AI will replace jobs, and that certainly could be true for certain parts of applications in other industries. But the way I like to describe this type of AI is kind of like a safety sidekick. So when you can't be everywhere, let's say second, third shift, larger facilities, think of a safety sidekick that can give you the relevant information that you're looking for. And that's where I think that biggest application is of AI is like, how can it make people it's like superhumans and having more information than they're physically capable of having in certain scenarios. So just to break it down as a summary, AI is essentially a superpowered pattern recognition program. It is very hard to build these things, but in the basic sense of like what's happening from an engineering perspective, we're training a model to understand what's happening in the environment, and then we're building rules around those models. So at a very low, high level overview, this is essentially what Voxel does. We leverage computer vision AI. We integrate with existing security camera systems, and we detect safety risks and near misses in real time. So existing cameras, existing videos, overlaying that with computer vision AI software, and then giving insights to everyday safety professionals and operational leaders. This is going to be the fun part of the presentation. So we have different categories of areas where artificial intelligence is already making an impact. We've been around, and other companies in our space have been around for over 4 to 5 years at this point. And so there's been a lot of time for the data to be trained on supply chain and industrial environments. So we're going to go through a few categories. We're going to start with ergonomics. So essentially, tracking repetitive movements, improper lifting procedures, especially if it's more repetitive. And you can also like rank them from a level of severity. So like low, medium, and high, depending on the repetition or the angulation of the body, for example. So we're going to show a couple of video examples of improper bending when it comes to the trunk or the back, as well as overreaching when it comes to lifting overhead and for your shoulders and arms. So I will go into our first example video.
Awesome. So you're watching this clip here live, and I'm going to talk you through what's happening. So in this clip, we see AI being used to identify ergonomic risk at a metals manufacturer. The system is overlaying a digital skeleton, and you're going to see that light up in color in green, yellow, and red. And at a quick glance, users, whether they're trained in ergonomics or not, can have a quick, immediate takeaway of which body parts are at risk and can observe the specific task creating that risk. In the instance you're watching on repeat here is that this is a facility that generally had an already good ergonomic design prior to deploying computer vision AI, and they attributed that to prevention through design. So they didn't expect to find many ergonomic risks after deploying computer vision. And however, the AI revealed that a really important issue, they see this on several lines. You can see it's the same line repeated. Um, this associate's removing this blue basket of waste and manually carrying it to a collection point. So the task exposed the associate is being exposed to repeated bending and lifting, which not only creates possibility for ergonomic strain, but is also introducing slip, trip, and fall risk as they're carrying the bin across the floor. So by identifying this hidden hazard, the organization was able to redesign the waste collection process, removing the need to carry these blue waste bins altogether. Another example that we can look at, when we talk about ergonomic risk, one of the things that arise is ergonomic risk is usually a symptom of a larger illness. Associates are putting their body at risk because they're trying to overcome a bigger issue, bigger risk. So this clip's a real attention grabber. I remember it just took my breath away the first time I saw it. AI flagged this incident because of ergonomics for improper bend. The individual is moving a keg, which, I'm going to say I had a boring college experience. I am unsure of how much a keg weighs, maybe test me on that later. And I'd wager to bet it's quite heavy. So as you watch this video, notice how many ancillary benefits, right? So we're clipping the video, the AI is clipping the video due to ergonomics, but how many other potential risks and potential SIFs are you seeing that might provide you value not only from EHS, but operational and quality concerns that could arise? So as you're thinking about this, how many risks are you seeing? You can spot them here. And then ask yourself if this behavior occurred in your facility today, even if it was just once, or in an area with limited supervision, would your organization be aware of it? Would you know it happened? And for me, coming from industry, there might be areas that are high traffic areas that you might know. Maybe you have general cameras here. But a lot of times the short answer is if it's a one-off behavior, if it's somewhere that's not frequently monitored by leadership, it's maybe one employee that works it, you might not know. So with this knowledge, companies can take steps to be proactive. They can engineer out the hazard and invest in the right equipment to ensure that we complete this task safely every time.
Perfect. Thanks, Brittany. So the next category we're going to go over is PPE. So as you can see here, There are opportunities around essentially PPE compliance. It's pretty straightforward. If someone is required to wear a certain type of PPE, artificial intelligence can identify the PPE and then say whether it's on or off or whether it's present or not. You'll notice this thing with artificial intelligence, it tends to need rules that are more black and white. So, for example, with ergonomics, it's a very strict rule around, okay, the back should not bend beyond this degree when you're lifting. You should be using your legs. Same for PPE. It's a black or white use case in the sense of, are they wearing a hard hat? Yes or no. On top of these use cases, we also have hairnets and gloves and vests and hard hats, which you can see here, as well as bump caps. So we have a couple other use cases that aren't on the slide, but we'll show an example video next.
So as you're watching this clip in a distribution center, the associates are required to wear safety vests, and the computer vision model is detecting that the PPE is not being worn, even at a great distance. Now, let's just all, we can all agree, wearing PPE is likely the minimum standard for safety. But one of the things that's really important from PPE is reinforcing the behavior turns into a safe work habit. So if we're ignoring at the very basic need of safety, non-compliance to PPE, culturally, what else could we expect is being ignored?
All right. We don't want to bore you with more PPE videos. I think it's kind of, we've seen one, you've seen them all. The next category is quite diverse. So there's a lot of things you can do with vehicle safety. And this is also another, I mean, even outside of what we're talking about right now, if any of you guys have fleets that you're operating, um, that's quite distinct from what we're talking about here. This is more like indoor vehicles, but there is another application of computer vision for driver safety. So like, are they wearing a seatbelt, hard braking, things of that nature. So what you've perhaps seen on the telematics and fleet side of the business is also very similar to what companies like Voxel are providing for inside the facility itself. So when we're talking about vehicle safety here, it could, if it's an outdoor camera, it could refer to bigger vehicles, but primarily we're talking about pallet jacks, forklifts, and things of that nature. So now some of the things that you can identify are things around like speeding. Are they going above the designated speed limit for that particular vehicle? And you'd be surprised that people can kind of change the internal speeding mechanisms on these vehicles. And we've had customers that have told us that. Also stopping at intersections. So is there a designated area, let's say at the end of an aisle or at a door or at an intersection where they should be coming to a complete stop? And are we seeing that behavior? And then lastly, and probably the most importantly, proximity near misses. These are your forklift to forklift or forklift to pedestrian close calls, or whenever we're seeing that moving vehicles and moving people are getting close to each other. Let's have more visibility into that because that could be an indicator of a potentially very significant injury happening in the future and one that we would want more visibility into. So we'll get started with the first video here.
Great. So we all know powered industrial trucks can pose a significant SIF risk. And so computer vision models have been trained to identify powered industrial trucks and, like Kayvon said, in speeding, stopping, and proximity. So now that you've seen this clip once, I'm just going to explain a little bit about what's happening. So this clip was initially captured because the forklift did not stop at the intersection, which was that front stack of pallets. So as we continue to watch, we're able to get even more information from the scene. The forklift is bumping into the dock door, and because of that contact, they're actually pulling forward. But when they're pulling forward, they can't see over that double stacked pallet. And that's where they're causing a near miss with an almost other forklift. And then we observe how fast that operator can jump out of their forklift, which would lead me to believe a very strong assumption I could never see exactly, but the operator doesn't have their seatbelt on. So again, we're capturing the first part, which is they didn't stop, but all the additional information we're able to gather tells us a lot. Now, again, I challenge you to think back to your work environments. If an associate hits a door, and again, this is a soft door, so there's no obvious damage, would your frontline associates report it? One step further, would you even have visibility into the near miss between the both of those forklifts where they almost hit each other? These are strong examples of how increased visibility can uncover hidden risks and provide a deeper window into your safety culture. It opens the door for coaching conversations, training, and again, just of building and eliminating risk as it's identified. As we look at the next example, this clip is showing a PIT collision. But what's important is that it was originally captured because the forklifts were too close together. So as you watch, I encourage you just to think about the many different contributing root causes at play. I can't answer these just from this one-time video, but in your individual facilities, you would have the added context. Were the operators looking in the direction of travel? Are the travel paths clearly marked? Can I fix that to make it clearer? Was speed a factor? Or is this just about broader PIT and forklift driving culture? And is this what's considered acceptable in day-to-day operation? Chances are, based on these practices we're seeing in the video, this wasn't the first time or even the second incident of its kind. This pattern often points to deeper opportunities within the safety culture where behaviors have just become normalized instead of corrected. And this is where visibility makes all the difference in identifying not just the collision itself, but the conditions and culture allowing it to happen. And then we'll do one more forklift here. And what we first want to do here is talk about a little bit about what's happening. So we can see a pallet jack and we can see a pedestrian wrapping a pallet. And so our pedestrian wrapping the pallet has their back to the pallet jack, and the pallet jack pulls into that aisle to drop a pallet off. So the really interesting thing here is kind of twofold. So if I focus on the pallet jack operator, that pallet jack operator knows the pedestrian's there and still chooses to drive just as close as they did to the pedestrian. Vice versa, the pedestrian has their back to the pallet jack and they are unfazed at how close that pallet jack is getting to them. So again, the AI is seeing this clip because the pedestrian and the pallet jack are too close together. But again, look at the behaviors and think about the concerns that would be raised culturally. Fortunately, it was a near miss, but again, how many times do you have to get that close before, unfortunately, something bad can happen? So the good news is that once the site became aware of this concern, they redesigned the area and they were able to move the pallet wrapping to a separate location away from any PIVs, and they eliminated the risk altogether. So it's a great example of how the AI can highlight cultural norms and lead to meaningful permanent changes. Great.
All right. Thanks, Brittany. The fourth category and the last one from a video perspective, we're going to show a lot of videos here for different categories. It's kind of a broader one. We call it environment. So as you can see, we have things that are people related like ergonomics and PPE, vehicle related. So that was the category we just went through. And then the environment itself. So are there things that are non-vehicle and non-people related that we can identify that are happening essentially in the background? So one of these could be things like liquid spills. This could lead to a slip, trip, and fall hazard at a location. No pedestrian zones. So are people walking in the wrong areas? And this could also be used for security. So you could use it from a safety perspective to make sure people aren't walking in hazardous areas, but it could also be, hey, there's a certain time of day, let's say for food safety or other types of things where it's just general facility security. After a certain time, there should be no one there. During a certain period of time, no one should be there. So there's a lot of rules you can make around people being in certain areas, whether it's for safety or security reasons. The third thing here is blocked exits and aisles. Think about your egress areas, your eye wash stations, fire exits, anywhere where there should not be something that's blocking an area. Let's say whether it's a pallet or something else. Uh, we like to sometimes call it a no clutter rule. So if there's something that's in an area where there shouldn't be something there, you can kind of designate those areas on your cameras, and then AI can essentially let you know automatically, hey, there's something here. And even better yet, a lot of these things are time-based. So let's say it's okay for something to be there for 1 minute or less, or 5 minutes or less. You can also set time parameters saying, okay, if it's here longer than 5 minutes, that's when I want to know, as opposed to 1 second, for example. And a couple other use cases here, we have working at heights, which is self-explanatory. If people are working at heights in areas without proper fall protection or where they should not be, let's say on top of a certain piece of machinery, that would be working at heights. And then lastly, we will show a video of suspended loads and working underneath a suspended load, which obviously is a very significant injury risk. So now back to the fun part of the videos.
Thanks, Kayvon. And you talked a little bit about, how the no pedestrian zone can be used for safety, security, really has operational tie-ins too, like you were mentioning for 5S. So great example. So the video you're watching on your screen here, the AI has been detected to train when workers or associates are entering like conveyor rollers in this case. So could be work at heights. In this case, we have it as no pedestrian. Again, kind of dependent upon the work scenario, but this is a great example of no pedestrian. So here we have an associate that's dislodging a stuck pallet. So they're picking up kind of a 2x4 of sorts, and they're trying to unstick that pallet. So while it might seem like a simple routine task, the real question is, how often is this happening? And that frequency was unknown to this at this individual organization. And when we were able to uncover the frequency, the amount of that risk in the frequency, right, frequency and severity, really became uncovered. So by capturing and analyzing this event, organizations gain real clear visibility into the problem statement. And with that knowledge, they can take action, whether it's designing a tool that allows the pallet to be freed from the ground level or ensuring that the process in its entirety can be completed safely every time. Our next example that Kayvon shared with us would be the slips and falls. So in this clip, we can uh, in time, preventing it from becoming a bigger hazard, whether it be a slip from an employee, the forklift or PIV, the wheel spinning, not being able to stop, a lot of hazards here. So if left unaddressed, just really dive into the possibilities of what could occur, and they're great. So by surfacing this issue right away, we enable a fast response for both people and operations. Every single time. So what we're seeing is a potential SIF, and honestly, could really be very clearly a fatality. This associate's working at heights, they're about 30 feet up. And if the associate would fall in from 30 feet, it would not have been good. So the equipment in this case is a turret truck. So the out cab onto elevated platform. They actually get back on their turret. That's the type of behavior we think that doesn't ever happen in our facilities, but in reality it does, or at least it could, and we wouldn't necessarily know of it. So it's a powerful reminder that with even in operations with strong safety programs, there's always some level of a gap. We don't know, we can't see. Next one we're going to look at here is showing multiple associates under a suspended load. So it's another clear potential SIF risk. And what's powerful is the ability to observe this in real time. So within seconds, a system can notify the appropriate leaders, whoever you're selecting, to get notified of this risk, whether that be by phone, text, email, and they're able to get out there and respond immediately and intervene on the unsafe behavior. That quick visibility is what's preventing near misses like this from escalating from a near miss to an actual incident. It's not just about detection, it's about enabling a faster, more effective action once we know about it.
Awesome. Thanks, Brittany. So those are just some real world examples of some of the use cases. The good news is that we're not done with the videos. You'll see a few more by the end of the presentation. But one thing that's important to address is that with any kind of technology, and especially artificial intelligence, and especially if you've used it for other applications, you might already be aware of this, but there can be a lot of, let's call it, data and noise that comes in. So when you're having most, I mean, I would say I've been here for a long time. I've worked with a lot of our customers. There are, especially when it comes to like, let's say ergonomic behaviors or even forklift behaviors, there can sometimes be a lot of data to work through. And people, especially in your positions, don't have all day to figure out and watch 100 videos to see all these leading indicators. So another big part of any kind of solution is what does the data processing look like and how can we uncover the trends and the actionable insights as quickly as possible. So as a really quick example, Let's say we want to learn more about this no stop at intersection risk. You can see that there's 164 videos over the last 30 days. No one wants to watch 164 videos. But what we can do is start to see, okay, we can look at the quantity of trends. If there's a particular day we would like to dive into that had a higher risk, or if there's a certain uh, day of the week, which we'll get into as well. So you can see the quantity here, instance by camera in this area. So learning where in your facility these risks are happening. So you can see improper bend would be here. And then the packing camera, these are all names of different cameras, that has twice as much risk as a different part of the facility. So maybe we can figure out what's going on in the packing area. We have the highest frequency there, and then we can move to other parts of the facility. And the last piece is time period. So is there a day of the week or a time of the day where there's a certain higher frequency, and should we be more on the floor during those times? What is it about the operations at those time of days that's essentially leading to higher risk? It could just be purely more employees are working during that time, but there could be other underlying factors, and we're just there are opportunities to look at data and essentially, as opposed to watching everything that's happening, uh, see where the hotspots are and where the trends are. So, as a quick overview, we have the frequency, we have the location based by camera, and then also by time period. But what I think is the coolest part is the next slide, which Brittany will start sharing around heat mapping and a more visual tool to understand uh, some of the frequency and trends that are occurring.
Definitely. So as Kayvon mentioned, the videos and the trend data from AI is really powerful on its own. But what's enabling teams to define problem statements and begin working towards solutions can really take us into that like next step further in heat maps, where the insights become even more actionable. So heat maps can consolidate hundreds, even thousands of video into a single visual example, like you see on the screen here, which is showing exactly where your risk and your incidents are occurring most frequently. So it makes it far easier for teams to mobilize quickly, align on a clear problem statement, and pull together supporting video examples of what's happening. From here, you can prioritize risks, identify effective solutions, and ultimately decide where budget and resources will deliver the greatest return on investment. One step further, the greatest risk reduction. So let's look at a heat map in a little bit more detail. So if we go to the next slide, so would be if we clicked into a hotspot. So we now have an idea and we want to drill down to a specific video. The problem starts to become much more clear for us. So in this clip, we're seeing an associate working at ground level. So the skeleton overlay is displaying the REBA ergonomic scoring, which is highlighting the specific body parts at risk. This type of insight is allowing the team to define the problem. And in this case, the problem statement is frequent bending to ground level and understanding how often it's happening. And then from here, they can partner with operations to find a practical solution. So for this individual task, the organization implemented a work table. They were able to lift the work from ground level up to a table, which significantly reduced the amount of bending that had to occur and lowering the overall ergonomic risk to the associate. So if we go into another example, we can go into overreaching. And we can see an associate that is building a pallet overhead level. So they're reaching upwards for consistent overhead lifting. And sometimes these challenges can be driven by business and customer needs, but by surfacing them with AI, we can partner with operations to find the best solution. Sometimes we can need to introduce an engineering control to reduce the hazard, or adjusting the pallet design to eliminate it. Now, sometimes it's not that easy. So, again, customer needs, trailer sizes, there's a bunch of constrictions, but it's going to start to enable the conversations to have. The other thing we can always talk about in this type of instance is maybe we rotate the associate to limit the amount of exposure that they're having concentrated on just one individual. So the key point here is that visibility is empowering collaboration and problem solving before repetitive motions like this can become recordable injuries or lost time where, it's impacting the associate more long term. The next example we're going to look at is going to be excuse me, highlighting not only an ergonomic risk, like overreaching, but we're also going to point to some ancillary benefits that we're going to identify through a potential catastrophic SIF level incident that you'll see when we watch the video here. So if we look on, the AI is flagging a repeatable pattern of this ergonomic strain, which is the ladder handling. But again, I want you to think beyond just the ergonomic risk and ask yourself what other risks might be present. So you can see the associates pulling out the ladder, but there's a bigger story here. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with this work environment, but this work environment is it's a pit. And in the pit, we call this area the pulper, which is also a confined space. So what are some of the things we're seeing right from the beginning of the video? You can see that the associates unclipping their fall protection before they're all the way off of the ladder. So this is a fall risk of about 10 to 12 feet, and there's a drowning risk at the bottom of the pulper. So lots of opportunity just there alone. It also raises some broader questions around confined space compliance. Are there permits, ventilation? Is there attendant present? Is the attendant actually trained to do that task? Is there a rescue plan? Then even shifting focus, if you look to the very back of this video where the mouse is moving, you'll notice a control panel in the back that's blinking green. What's that indicate to me? This piece of equipment's not been locked out. There's a hazardous energy exposure as well. So here in a single clip, we see multiple pathways to a potential SIF. Fall from heights, drowning, hazardous energy, all layered on top of the ergonomic hazard. So with AI, organizations can surface and prioritize these life-critical risks first, then progressing into addressing the ergonomic challenges too. So we're going to take a look at another real-world example, but I have some measurable outcomes to share with you. So we're going to dig into a company called Great Dane, and whether you realize it or not, Great Dane and the workers that build their trailers with that iconic Great Dane logo keep America moving. So Great Dane has been recognized as leaders in the trailer manufacturer space for about over 100 years. They've got 11 manufacturing plants and 5 distribution centers between North and South America. So digging into what they did, Great Dane began their computer vision journey early last year, deploying the technology at their PA-based trailer manufacturing facility. The technology was something new and different for this team, but they embraced it and jumped in, really willing to learn. And that motivation was created from injury frequencies the year prior. And overall, a best-in-class injury rate across their network. So they were already in a good place, but they wanted to be even better. So a few key things to note about Great Dane's approach and how they integrated the computer vision technology. So first, they had top-down support. So from their corporate team to local site leaders and frontline leaders, everyone was engaged and on board. A cross-functional team of production leaders, safety, quality, HR, some lean or 5S team members were assigned to the project team. And finally, reviewing their risk data was part of their daily workflow. So this was something that was integrated into what they did every single day as part of their leadership team, making sure at least one action was being assigned or identified or resolved each day. And the team truly embraced continuous improvement, and they decided to prioritize that to drive this cultural change. So with relatively low turnover and a pretty experienced workforce, the team at Great Dane wanted to make sure that implementing computer vision technology wouldn't harm their safety culture or their regular culture. So to do so, they decided to focus heavily on the opportunities to correct the process rather than focusing on the worker, not the behavior. So really leaning into treating the symptom rather than the cause. Not treating the cause, not the symptom. So to ensure an unbiased risk approach, they used ergonomic heat maps to identify opportunities for process improvements without focusing on the employee-specific behaviors. So we're going to take a look at an example. So in this example here, the organization was able to identify some non-value added scrap material handling that was happening from this laser. So thank you, Kayvon. And so what you can see here is happening is they are cutting on this left-hand side, and then they're handling and carrying the scrap all the way across the floor to this other location. So rather than taking a frontline approach of saying, well, the associate should be lifting correctly, we said, well, what about leaning in and focusing more about the task? Why are we carrying this material from the left to the right side of the screen? So a no-cost solution was able to be put in place, and now the laser makes two last cuts before the job finishes for the scrap metal. So the chunks are smaller and it can be recycled. So this is reducing the struck by risk for forklifts, as well as reducing the manual handling. And from the manual handling side, gives you an operational and efficiency improvement of not having to go back and forth. So most importantly, this fix came from their workers. They involved their frontline workers. They were making suggestions, and yet another cultural improvement box checked from having them engaged in the process. The associate's going to accept that feedback because they were listened to. So what are their results? What did they achieve?
Sorry. There we go.
So in the last 90 days, how did the team do? So spoiler alert, focusing on improvements with safety forward mindset allowed them to get more of an unbiased approach. And what that unbiased approach gave them was a 42% decrease in recordable injuries and a 71% reduction in first aid injuries. It is just absolutely impressive what they did. In addition, they implemented some key KPIs around operational gains and what they were able to achieve in reducing some of that non-value added material handling and improved workflows. And aside from the ergonomic team, they also were able to mitigate some other hazards and other near misses during shift change in the parking lot and through forklift handling near those manufacturing lines. So Great Dane, they continue to be an innovator in the space, and they have an ever-changing amount of products. So it's not a stagnant work environment, but they're leveraging that computer vision AI to continue to think ahead and try to prevent these injuries before a person actually gets hurt, but as they're identifying the unsafe behavior or conditions.
Awesome. Thanks, Brittany. What I love about that case study the most is to what Brittany mentioned, treating the cause and not the symptom. So a lot of these risks, and we're going to talk about this in terms of best practices towards the end, but after being here for almost 4 years and just seeing a plethora of customers use the solution, AI is just a tool. I think how you use it is how it's going to be received by the employee base. So she also mentioned that the solution that was implemented from that non-value added material handling was actually suggested by the employees, which is amazing to hear. And that's exactly how they've seen the results that you see on the slide here as well. Just quickly diving into another quick case study. I'm not going to spend too much time here, but Alfeo, they're a major food and pet food manufacturer here in the U.S. They produce over 1 billion pounds of food annually. The only thing I want to kind of bring here is it's a very similar case study of having more visibility leading to reduction in injuries. But I did want to call out this. We are working with the risk and insurance manager there, and one of the ways where they built the business case to go from one facility to, I believe, 7 facilities across their entire network is looking at how this can help with insurance costs. So I know in British Columbia, there's probably a separate mechanism than how it works with workers' comp here in the US, but I would encourage people to look at things like insurance claims and risk and things of that nature as an additional benefit on top of improving safety and potentially operations at the site level. So, a couple summary slides for you guys here. As you can tell, Brittany and I are very passionate about the space. We do believe fully that the future of site visibility involves computer vision and AI, improving visibility, improving communication, culture, and things of that nature. And in summary, one of the best parts is that you can leverage AI without changing anything. If you have existing security cameras at your facility, it could be safety related, but I mean, once you've learned now more about computer vision AI, there are a lot of other companies out there that are focused on not only safety but operational insights, product quality. if you have a certain problem statement as part of your business, I know that we're all safety professionals here in the room, except for me, but safety is probably top of mind for you guys. But as you want to bring it, AI to the broader enterprise, there are a lot of other applications, especially when it comes to operations, where you can similarly use your existing camera infrastructure to have insights across your operation and across your facility.
Hey, Vaughn, just to add to that, some of the other stakeholders, and maybe you have some good examples too, but we've seen supply chain, continuous improvement, food safety. Who are some of the other stakeholders that you've seen?
Those are some major ones. We just talked about the risk manager and someone that's managing insurance in the previous slide in the previous case study. Anyone that's dealing with operations, yeah, to your point, supply chain, ops, distribution center, or general managers. They're like actually like leading the facility. Every company is a little bit different, but we have seen a lot of success. Of course, to get any safety project implemented, it requires working with several teams to get that over the line. Um, as we move on beyond leveraging the existing camera infrastructure, as I mentioned, the proactive safety journey starts with AI identifying the video data itself, but then we talked about insights in terms of the quantitative data, so like by camera, by time period, but then Brittany also dived into the heat maps and a visual indicator of where the risk is happening. And then lastly, all of that is so that the action's happening. That's the most important part, and it's the job of AI and the vendors in the space to make having those insights as easy as possible for you to take action. Uh, the future of site safety also includes real-time risk identification and SIF prevention. We talked about working underneath the suspended load, working at heights, forklift near misses. All of these have a really high impact on not only the frequency, but also those are super high severity risks that safety professionals and leaders at the company would want to know about if they're occurring so we can prevent the injuries before they happen. And the last piece, and what's great about artificial intelligence is I mean, I remember when ChatGPT came out back in 2020, I want to say two-ish, and it was the coolest thing, and now they're launching something new every time. Software products are always improving. There's a lot of money going into the space across the board, improving, let's say, NVIDIA chips and building more data centers. There's going to be a lot more improvement over time. So what AI is capable of doing today is going to look very different even a year from now. And it's going to look exponentially different in 5 years. I think my personal opinions, there's too much money going into it for it to go away. So I think it's just going to be a reality of how can we use AI and what is the benefit of using AI for our industry and or for our facility, our operations, as opposed to like if this will exist or not. I feel very strongly that this will be kind of the new reality just based off of like the amount of investment that's going into the infrastructure and the technology development. And then I like to end with this slide. Um, we talked about this a bit throughout the presentation when we're talking about the Great Dane case study, but best practices for using AI. Um, Positive reinforcement, we talked a lot about training and coaching and treating the cause and not the symptom, involving your employees. We've seen so many success stories of people using AI for rewarding good behaviors. Of course, we're tracking risks, but it's all about how we're using it. And also, what's interesting is once you start to look at more videos, we actually call this out for a lot of our customers. There are good behaviors that are also happening in the exact same video clips. So you can have the coaching moments, but you also have an opportunity to reward or congratulate employees for doing the right thing and for performing good behaviors. And I think that's a big part of um, making AI less scary from an implementation perspective. Maintaining focus can be big. As I mentioned, there's a lot of data that can come in. So knowing what your key areas of focus are and handling them, let's say one or two at a time, as opposed to trying to boil the ocean, we've seen that be very successful. So like we have customers that just want to do forklift safety, and they're going to be tracking proximity, no stop at intersection, and a lot of their safety programs and coaching and training and effort will be on that until they get it to a risk level, a reduced risk level that's more palatable to them, and then they can move to ergonomics or other parts of the risk at the facility. Generally be creative. I think you guys all have your existing safety program and culture. I was at the awards ceremony in June, and it was great to see just the amazing work culture that you guys have built across the board. And I got to hear a lot of stories. That's amazing. And I always say that like AI is not going to like improve or reduce from your work culture. It's going to enhance a great safety culture, and it could make a bad safety culture even worse, right? So you guys all have amazing safety programs, and I'm sure you have you can find creative ways of leveraging the insights that are coming in into the existing programs and culture that exist. Open communication, we talked about this with the Great Dane case study. I always feel like open communication saying, hey, we're going to implement this. Here's why, and here's how it's going to be used. We're not here to fire people. We're not here to punish people, but we rather want to keep you safer. That open communication, I think, will always go. And that's not just AI, that's across the board, just general best practice. But as opposed to someone not communicating how it's going to be used and it's just sitting in a room and it's maybe just for leadership, I think I've seen be a lot more effective with open communication. And the last point here is AI is just a tool. It's true because let's say there's a building that has Voxel in it and Voxel's just running and we're bringing a lot of videos and we're analyzing we're identifying a lot of risks, but if nothing's happening based off of it, or if it's not being used effectively in terms of like we talked about positive reinforcement of open communication, it won't be as effective. It's just a tool. How a customer or how someone uses the tool determines how effective it'll be. So I hope we shared a lot more about artificial intelligence. You learned something, you got to see some real world examples, and now you can take some time to reflect and see how it can positively impact not only safety but general operations for your respective businesses. So
We've
with
got
that, we have
options.
a final slide here. We have a QR code which would lead you to like a landing page, but we're happy to answer any questions. And thank you guys for your time and attention today. We really appreciate the opportunity.
All right, really appreciate that, guys. I'll pass it over to Wayne. He's going to do a really quick wrap up here.
Oh, Wayne.
Wayne, you're
I
on
think
mute.
you're muted there.
I'm gonna get that banner or the t-shirt made. You know, it's so far into this world of you're on mute. All right. But again, I want to thank Voxel, both Brittany and Kayvon. A lot of very good information there. I know we've had some questions, but we're gonna have to get going just on the amount of time and what we've been able to cover off here today. So again, thank you so much for sharing an amazing presentation. I learned a lot myself, and I've already had some vignettes from your group. So thanks again. Want to thank our audience that joined us here today. So unfortunately, we couldn't get into the questions. I do want to just do a couple public announcements. Of course, we've got our courses. We've got a lot of new e-learning courses that we're launching for supervisors and managers, free to members for the first 2 months. Let's get out there, check them out. We're bringing a lot of new courses. Over 30 new courses will launch here at MSABC this year. Again, want to let you know about our Lean 5S certificate training that's coming up in September, September 17th, and in New Westminster, we've got it October 7th. So again, if you're, which is the basis of slip, trips, and falls, again, go and check out our Lean 5S certificate training. With the combustible dust regulations coming to public hearing this month, make sure you're prepared. Um, oh, we do have time for some questions as well.
Perfect. Yeah, no, that's awesome, Wayne. We can. I think we have 10 minutes here.
Is that
So
what
if
it
you can,
is?
yeah, we got 10 minutes up till 11:10.
I
So
thought you were
we're
telling me to go right into,
no, no, sorry,
meeting.
no, you're
Yeah.
good,
So
Wayne.
I jumped. I jumped. So
No,
Vox,
you're
back
perfect.
on.
Well, I appreciate that information, Wayne. We'll actually jump into the Q&A. So we got 10 minutes,
Please do.
guys. We had a bunch of questions submitted, which is really great to see. Just as a heads up for everyone, we're not going to have a chance to get through all the questions, but what we'll do is we'll compile all the questions we got. We'll ensure we get some answers in terms of kind of those key information, and we'll share that with the recordings as well. So don't worry, we'll get those responses back to you. With that said, I'm going to jump into some of these questions here. One that we had gotten was more around kind of the logistics aspect of using this technology. So for those workplaces where they don't necessarily have security cameras set up, is there alternatives? Can they use phone-based video recording to look at specific tasks? What's the alternatives for people in those scenarios?
Great question. I can handle this one. So we talked a lot about like fixed security cameras and CCTV footage. There are other companies that are focused on ergonomic assessment through the smartphone. Like Tumiki is a good example, like that we've seen in the industry. So you to use AI, you don't necessarily have to have, or like computer vision AI, you don't necessarily have to have existing security cameras. We do run into facilities that don't, and they end up installing them. But if for some reason you're not allowed to have security cameras, there is an ability to have things from like the smartphone. There are companies that have uh, cameras on like forklifts, for example, so they could. Those are like more point solutions. Like from a security camera, what's the benefit of that is because you can see the whole facility, so you can see like from a bird's eye view. Whereas from your phone, you can capture a specific behavior and task, but there are kind of like nuances to each one. But the long answer short is yes, you can use your smartphone for like an ergonomic assessment, but it's gonna be more of like a point solution as opposed to something like Voxel or what we just presented, which is like 24/7 and always monitoring. So they're just the same technology can exist, but different value proposition.
Perfect. Appreciate that, Kayvon. And then one other logistics question they had too. How many cameras are typically required or recommended as part of this? And specifically, do you need to have one camera dedicated to one, risk factor that it's looking at, or can one camera look at all those different risk factors simultaneously?
Sure. I can answer from high level. I think Brittany's perspective as a former customer is important here. I'll answer the second part first. One camera can look at unlimited use cases. So there isn't a limitation on what one camera can provide. So if you want to look for forklift safety, ergonomics, no pedestrian zones, PPE, all for one camera, you can, and you can kind of pick and choose what you're looking for in each camera feed. So there's no limitation there. On the number of cameras needed or what the best practice is, I'll hand off to Brittany from her experience.
I'll say that there's not necessarily a one size fits all answer here. In some small facilities, we see people that have 5 cameras. But I'd say maybe on average, I see around like 10 to 15 cameras. And again, it depends on what you're trying to solve for. We have some customers that one site has 200 cameras that they're monitoring for. But in that case, you might find more security needs being flagged and they want to monitor for additional things. So it is really the best part of computer vision is being able to do what fits your location, your needs, your risk level, and that can be accommodated.
Wonderful. Really appreciate that insight, guys. One of the other questions we had was around, what the typical employee sentiment is when organizations look to deploy this, how to best communicate the value to frontline employees and ensure that they feel like their privacy is protected and, the organization is really getting benefit from this.
Definitely. It's a multifaceted answer. What I'll answer a general statement, I'll hit on unions just a really little bit, and we can add some more context in the write-up afterwards. So it all depends on organizational culture, but a lot of times involving the associate one from the very beginning. So they know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how does it benefit them. When I did this as a customer, one of our things was really proposing back to the associates that we would be clear on what are we working on, how much are we investing in solving, and how does that help them either do their jobs better, safer, more efficiently. So when they felt like they were heard and they saw, wow, to fix that problem was $100,000. I didn't even think it would cost that much. That feeling cared for really helped them lean in. The other thing I did, and 2 of my facilities were union and the rest were not, but we actually wrote a policy statement on how Voxel would be used. Now, this is not a requirement. This was a company decision that we chose to do, but we said we would not discipline unless it was considered egregious. So if you're doing donuts in your forklift, we can all agree we know better than to do that. Therefore, that could be considered egregious, and we would discipline in that case. But if you didn't have your PPE on, at least in the terms of Voxel, we were not disciplining. Now, the catch is if you ask your leadership team to go out to the line, I bet they can find that same behavior from that same associate, non system related, AI related, and then you can discipline or deal with that behavior separately. So I think again, transparency, inclusive environment. We made it fun, gamification and rewards. All of these are great examples of showing the associates that we care. It's for their benefit. And the last thing I'll highlight is you can blur the video. So if you did not want to see, you didn't want to know the associates, and maybe you want to do that by level. So maybe your GM can see it, maybe your ops manager, but you don't want your supervisors to see the individual's faces. You can blur that out, and that could be used as a training tool to address the actual situation rather than the associate.
Yeah, really good feedback there. One of the other questions we got was around more kind of the overall safety culture. So how can technologies like this and the use of AI help strengthen, organizational safety culture rather than just focus on more of like the compliance aspects?
It's actually really neat. So one of the ones I've worked on recently was with a customer for we did gamification of no stops. So the idea was that it's a 2 million square foot, and think of a square building moving stuff around, and they had an astronomical amount of no stops. That was their main problem. And what we did was gamified it so that each shift, whoever reduced the number of no stops by the most amount would have a pizza party. And the amount of engagement we saw, people were asking, where were we at? How did we compare? What do I need to do to get better? Is the expectation clear? And we found that rather than leadership having to kind of push and drive associates and kind of maybe feel like they're like the annoying nagger. It was in reverse. The associates were asking, "What do I need to do better?" They were immediately engaged in that culture, and that culture becomes transferable because while they're working on no stops today, tomorrow it's a different problem statement, transfers into again operations and efficiency, and that just becomes the way of how they work together as a team. And their next goal is actually going to be to do it as a facility-wide goal to reduce a certain percentage so everyone wins if and when they achieve whatever that goal is.
Yeah, I love that, Brittany. And a great way, we're always trying to make our safety programs more participatory in terms of getting better engagement from frontline teams, from supervisors. So, what a way to ensure that more people are engaged in the process as well. So, I really love that. We're just about at time here. So, one final question I have for the both of you is just kind of any final thoughts, any things you really want to share about, the benefit and how people can be successful in kind of deploying this within their organizations.
I think like I mean that, the point of the presentation was like I think we tried to cover the main pieces. I think Brittany touched on something at the very end which we didn't emphasize, and I figured it would come up during the Q&A, but it's around
Please.
our employees taking it, and she mentioned the blurring. At no point is there any biometric data being taken. So like if you already have existing security cameras at your facility, Voxel is not giving you any information that your cameras, if you wanted to like rewind your camera footage and like look at that particular time, there's no additional information that we're giving on who that person is. We're not tracking the number of, and there's no way for us to identify, like we're not able to do facial recognition. So there's no ability, and that's by design. We don't, not only from a privacy perspective or ethical perspective, there's a lot of regulations around that. Let's say we're talking about GDPR in Europe or in California, Illinois, I'm sure in Canada there's similar privacy regulations. We don't want to do that, but like cameras are legal. And so just from a surveillance perspective, knowing what the risks are while also protecting privacy is very paramount to us. So it's not about who's doing it, but like we talked about in the Great Dane case study, what is the cause rather than the symptom? And how do we just be more proactive? It's better to know these things than to wait for something bad to happen. So we're here to essentially just increase visibility. And if there are any other questions around best practices or I mean, Brittany's such an amazing resource given she was a customer and obviously just a great safety professional, but we're always happy to answer those afterwards. But I think in terms of what the technology can do, how to use it, what the best practices are, and just general exposure of, hey, this now exists, and that was the main goal. Is hopefully everyone's walking away that they learned something new today in terms of what the capabilities are. They learn more about how AI works, things of that nature.
Certainly. The only other thing I'd add to that is we're here to be partners. So part of the fun part of my job, what made me go from general industry to this, is that I get to lean into all of our accounts and say, how can I help? Did we establish leading indicators? How's it going? What's our problem? Can I design something for you? So I think that partnership is the key thing at what makes AI not only successful at an individual site, but the partnership between the customer and the organization, like ours in this case, is having that support that you're never doing it alone. I become an extra hand for you. So rather than having, say, three EHS people, you've got now a fourth, and we partner together, and that's the fun part of my job.
Love that. Appreciate that, Brittany. Thank you for answering those Q&A. As we said, guys, any of the questions that you'd ask, we'll make sure that we collect those and we'll share back the answers as well with the recording. All right, with that, I'll pass it over to Wayne.
Great. Again, thanks for sticking around and listening to the questions we've asked. And again, if you have any more questions, please do reach out to us. We'd like to get those over to Voxel to provide more information. Thank you again, both Brittany and Kayvon, for attending. Will, great for a wrap up. Just gonna not go through the whole preamble, but I do want to make mention we are in public consultation for the dust hazard analysis. And so we are doing a lot of work around this. We'll be offering our dust hazard analysis certificate course at the New Westminster Make It Safe coming up on October 8th and 9th. So do check it out. A lot of changes we expect that will be coming forward for employers here in British Columbia. Thank you all again for making time to join us today. As always, visit us online anytime for help or to access our webinars, our resources, and watch for our email link to the recording of today's webinar and a survey link to share your feedback on this topic idea or future topic ideas. So thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you at Make It Safe in October. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.